Good evening, good evening. All righty. Make sure everything is okay. Okay. We are going to start the 12 powers of man this evening. Yes. Technical difficulties. Not for long, though. Okay, so let me start talking. The 12 powers of man is related to understandings gleaned from the Bible. And so, right in the introduction, he makes a point of saying that unless you have more than a surface level understanding of religion and spirituality, and this is Charles Fillmore, let me put that out there. Charles Fillmore is the author of The 12 Powers of Man. And it was written or published originally in 1930, or at least the copy that I got. If you have just a basic understanding of religion and spirituality, this is going to be a difficult one for you to digest. So don't feel bad. Continue your study or hang in. This might be a door opener for you. Okay. Also, it is available on Amazon, eBay, a few other websites. It's available on YouTube as an audiobook. So if you'd like to follow along with me or, read ahead, listen ahead, it's available as an audio, a bunch of different audios on YouTube. And it's also available in print or, ebook through Amazon, Amazon's Kindle. So let's say also related to the Bible and a lot of the stories that we learn from there. Much of what we're reading are parables. So you got to have a strong, solid understanding of that. And the importance of that is because all of this, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, relates back to something that was taught or some things that have been taught in the Egyptian mystery schools. That's where much of this knowledge originated. And their method of teaching was through stories, much like the parables. You're supposed to glean something from it, but sometimes you need like a glossary of what different terms relate to, context, things like that. So I'm going to refer you to the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, which is also available in print. It's available on some websites online, and you might be able to find a PDF. Now, the PDF that I got was long. It was the unabridged version, multiple pages longer than the print version that Pastor Michael has, my mentor, who started me on this journey with all the good information. Thank you, Pastor Michael. You gave me the language to start understanding much of what I was experiencing my whole life. All right, so with the preface, let's see. And the writing style being that was from the early 1900s, it's a bit dense, it's different, but it's definitely stuff that you can understand. I prefer to listen to the audio. I had to listen to it several times in order to really grasp some of the side information. Had I been reading it, it would not have worked out easy for me. But yeah, so if you're good with audio, do the audio and expect to have to repeat it. So with the preface, he says, Jesus prophesied the advent of a race of men who would sit with him on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. This book explains the meaning of this mystical reference, what and where the 12 thrones are, and what attainments are necessary by man before he can follow Jesus in this phase of his regeneration. Regeneration follows generation in the development of man. Generation sustains sustains and perpetuates the human. Regeneration unfolds and glorifies the divine. So this book is a study to help us grow in our spiritual understanding and to be able to have better control over our human powers and to be able to relate more strongly with the divine. Okay? The divine, the most high, Jesus, the creator of all seen and unseen of the universe, the ultimate one. Okay? It gets deep. And I'm so excited to be getting started on this. Okay, let me keep reading. It is not expected that beginners in the study of metaphysical Christianity will understand this book. It deals with forces that function below and above the field of conscious mind. This is what I was talking about earlier. The average religious thinker knows nothing about the subconscious mind and very little about the superconscious. Now, these terms and things like it are all through the different religious texts. With a proper understanding, you're able to easily equate it to your life, you know, where you are, where you're needing to go, you know, how far on the path you've made it from the last time you checked in, that type of thing. And what's usually the case is for someone who has an average understanding of religion and spirituality, as I said, they reject a lot of the understandings that are wrapped into what the stories are talking about in the Bible and the other religious texts. So let me keep reading. So, knows nothing about the subconscious mind and very little about the superconscious. This book presupposes a working knowledge of both. So if you're having a difficult time, do some study on subconscious, conscious, and superconscious, and that might help you along the way. This book aims to clear up the mystery that ever envelops the advent, life, and death of Jesus. To the superficial reader of the Gospels of his life was a tragedy. To the superficial reader of the Gospels, his life was a tragedy, and so far as concerns the kingly reign that was prophesied, it was a failure. Yet, those who understand the subtlety of the soul and supremacy of spirit see that Jesus was conqueror and a psychic force that was destroying the human. Those who understand the subtlety of the soul and supremacy of spirit see that Jesus was conqueror of a psychic force that was destroying the human race. So this is not physical, this is mental. Jesus was the star actor in the greatest drama ever played on earth. This drama was developed in the celestial realm, its object being to inject new life into perishing men. The full significance of this great plan of salvation cannot be understood by man until he awakens faculties that relate him to the earth beneath and the heavens above. So it's not just the surface level that we live every day. It's not related to being able to maintain ourselves, food, clothing, shelter, politics, social upheavals, and things like that. Even though it can kind of be related, you can understand some of the social upheaval if you understand where humankind is in their understanding of themselves. This is the time, this is the age where, as opposed to previously, where we were living very much on the material realm, you know, with interpretations of our purpose here being get it by your hands, pull yourself up by your bootstraps type understanding of, and us being in a position with the divine of, you know, potentially being punished all the time. There's all kinds of offenses that we're committing by thought, word, and deed. This is getting us to a different, a better, a less restricted understanding of ourselves, and how subtle energies, subtle understandings actually play a part in the quality of our lives here as human beings on this earth. Okay, let me keep going. It had long been prophesied that the time was ripe for the advent on this planet of a new race, and there had been much speculation as to the character and advent of the superhuman. Herein is set forth the metaphysical idea of the spiritual quickening of man on the human plane and his transformation into the divine. So this is an upgrade, okay? This is an upgrade, a spiritual upgrade. Not by a miracle or the fiat of God, but by the gradual refinement of the man of flesh into the man of spirit. As Paul taught, this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. It's a mindset, okay? Jesus was the first fruits of those who are coming out of the mortal into the immortal. He was the type man, the prototype, the way shower, through following his example and taking on his character as a spiritual minded man, we shall come into the same consciousness. So when you hear about Christ consciousness, God consciousness, this is what we're talking about. Higher level thought processes, higher level understanding of our purpose here and our capabilities. Okay, which influences how we interact with each other once we understand and appreciate how much we are a part of the I am consciousness. We are here having an experience, and we are connected, directly connected to the Most High. And once we realize our position and start seeing our purpose, having an understanding of our purpose individually and socially for being here, we interact with each other on a higher level. We have less judgments. We're more inclined, I hope, to allow each other to be and to grow wherever we are in our stages of development. Okay, we are a divine family, and it behooves us to act like it. Boy, I don't read headlines as much these days, and I definitely don't read a bunch of articles, because some of the stuff that us humans are putting each other through, totally unnecessary. We need to give each other more grace, more mercy, and allow people to grow in their understanding and development into their best human selves. Let me keep going. Spiritual discernment always precedes demonstration. Consequently, more is taught in this book as a possibility of attainment by man than has been demonstrated by any man save Jesus. Those who feel that they are ready for the great adventure in the attainment of eternal life in the body here and now should not be deterred because there are no outstanding examples of men who have risen to this most exalted degree. Now, I'm going to interject here because in a lot of the understandings that are mystical from the different religious backgrounds, I would say, people that are called saints or sages have come into the understanding or developed beyond what we could recognize as higher self. And with the understanding that the mystery schools had was that, higher level information is not for the masses. They won't know what to do with it. They'll want to apply it to materialism or, material circumstances in this life. And that's not what it's for. When he talks about not being deterred by the fact that other humans have not demonstrated, attainment of the Christ consciousness to the same level, the same degree that Jesus did, I would venture to say that they probably have, not en masse, but because regular folks wouldn't understand where they were and how they were comprehending and dealing, they did not broadcast it. A lot of what the sages, a lot of what the saints know, they don't impart to regular people because they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the understanding, they're not aiming for that, in how they live their life. So, and something else that occurred to me as I was reading, with the questioning that some of the disciples gave Jesus, they were even struggling with some of the understanding, and they were in close proximity to him, but they still had questions. I think the human tendency regarding this type of thought process, regarding this type of elevation, we want to make it more complicated than it is. Okay, a lot of the information, a lot of the development that we can attain is based on a simple understanding. Simple understandings, it's like Michael Jordan practicing the basics. He is so good because he knew his basics. Okay, he kept at his basics, he knew his basics, and that got him very far. The ones that want to be all fancy, they want to add this and add that, pizzazz and whatever. They may look good on the stage, they may look good on the court, but if they don't have their basics down, they're faltering here and there. Once the showboating is not the point of focus, they need to continue the work that they started off doing. It looks fancy, but it's not going to get you as far as staying with the basics. And let me keep reading. Through mental energy or the dynamic power of the mind, man can release the life of the electrons secreted in the atoms that compose the cells of his body. If you've ever seen the movie Powder, I think it is, with the young man who spent much of his time in his grandparents' basement, and they discovered he was there when they realized that his last grandparent had passed, and they were entering the house. Someone had entered the house to collect him. When they brought him out from under the house, he had a library down there. He had memorized everything that he read from that library. And so his understanding with his physical situation, um he was very energetically connected. And it was yeah, they discovered he was there because when they got the grandfather, they saw that he had signs of that electroshock that they do when your heart stops. So he had performed this without machines to his grandfather in his last moments, and they realized that through the um, that process that they do post-mortem examination. Um, he had energetic connections that other people did not have. And with the library that his grandparents supplied him with, because he was not able to be out in the sun and some other things, he had a better understanding. He had a higher understanding of himself and other people than those who came um, and discovered him after the fact. So it puts me in the mind of that movie, Powder. Physical science says that if the electronic energy stored in a single drop of water were suddenly released, its power would demolish a 6-story building. Who can estimate the power stored in the millions of cells that compose the human body? The method of release of this body energy and its control are mystically taught by Jesus. He was transfigured before his apostles, and his face did shine. This is a quotation now. And his face did shine as the sun, and his garments became white as the light. Before his crucifixion, he had attained such a mastery over his body cells that he told the Jews that they might destroy his body, and in 3 days he would raise it up. He demonstrated this in the resurrection of his body after it had been pronounced lifeless. When he disappeared in a cloud, he simply unloosed the dynamic atoms of his whole body and released their electrical energy. This threw him into the 4th dimension of substance, which he called the kingdom of heavens. Once again, if you've seen that movie Powder, when he's running through the field and the electricity comes down, the lightning comes down and interacts with his body, he disperses into the atmosphere because he had such a level of connection with it, and it was strong. The dynamic energy that man releases through prayer, meditation, and the higher activities of his mind is very great, and if not controlled and raised to the spiritual plane, may prove a source of body destruction. If carried to an extreme, it may even prove a cause of soul destruction. And here's a quote: "Be not afraid of them that kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. This one who is able to destroy both soul and body in Gehenna is the personal self or selfish ego that is in man. The electronic energy in man is a form of fire, which is represented by Gehenna. This electronic fire must be used unselfishly. If used to further the selfishness of man, it becomes destructive through the cross currents that it sets up in the nervous system. We do not encourage those who still have worldly ambitions to take up the development of the 12 powers of man." This right here puts me in mind of Paulo Coelho, the alchemist. Okay. The European gentleman who was looking for that character, the knowledgeable one, he needed to go deeper. He was still on a material understanding. He was motivated by a level of material gain. That's why he was sent to do some more study. I think it was essentially to humble him, to clean that off of him, to put him on the path to a higher spiritual understanding, to let go of the materialism, because he was attached to status. And I think that was part of what was holding him back in his study, why the teacher didn't want to teach him directly at that time. He could see it on him. All right. Go back one sentence. We do not encourage those who still have worldly ambitions to take up the development of the 12 powers of man. You will be disappointed if you seek to use these superpowers to gain money, turn stones into bread, control others. And here's a quote: "The kingdoms of the world, all these things will I give thee." That's an understanding with trying to control others. Or make a display of your power. Once again, living on this material plane, wanting to impress other people or just have power over other people, or make a display of your power. Here's a quote: "If thou art the Son of God, cast thyself down." These are temptations of the selfish ego, as recorded in the 4th chapter of Matthew, which Jesus had to overcome, and which all who follow him in the regeneration have to overcome. Okay, so it's not about here and now. It's about a higher level of functioning, a higher level of spiritual connection. And it's not related to the do this and don't do that we've been taught. If you do this or if you don't do that, you're going to the hellfire. Everybody wants to everybody who wants to condemn you to the hellfire has not gained the higher understanding to be able to teach you on a higher level. That's more of a low level controlling the society type thing. And that's been done successfully over the last millennia. This millennia is about the upgrade, okay? Not about controlling people mentally or physically on this material plane. And it's important to buy into this understanding in order to properly grasp where we're at right now, okay? I feel so. That's my opinion. Oh, chapter of Matthew, which Jesus had to overcome and which all who follow him in the regeneration have to overcome. Reading further: "Unspeakable joy, glory, and eternal life are promised to those who, with unselfish devotion, strive to develop the Son of God consciousness." God consciousness, Jesus consciousness, Christ consciousness. "All the glories of the natural man are as nothing compared to the development of the spiritual man. The things of this world pass away, but the things of spirit endure forever. In his flesh body, man may be compared to the caterpillar that is the embryo of the butterfly." I love this interpretation, this analogy. "In its undeveloped state, the caterpillar is a mere worm of the earth, but it has enfolded within it a beautiful creature awaiting release from its material envelope." Paul visualized this when he wrote in Romans 8, verse 22, "For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. And not only so, but ourselves also, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for our adoption, the redemption of our body." Jesus, the great teacher, gave many lessons for our instruction, the greatest and most mystical being the revelation of John. Here he showed himself to John as he is in his redeemed body. He stood in the midst of 7 lights, which represent the 7 ideas of divine mind ruling in the restored earth. One like unto a son of man, and this is a quote, one like unto a son of man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about at the breasts with a golden girdle, and his head and his hair were white as wool, white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire, and his feet like unto burnished brass, as if it had been refined in a furnace, and his voice as the voice of many waters. And he had in his right hand 7 stars, and out of his mouth proceeded a sharp 2-edged sword, and his countenance was as the sun shineth in his strength. This description this description of the appearance of Jesus is partly symbolical because John did not himself understand the full import of the powers that were being exercised by the spiritual man, whose words were so clean cut that they appeared to John as a 2-edged sword, whose eyes were so discerning that they seemed a flame of fire, whose voice was like the rippling of many waters. Language is poor and bare when one seeks to describe the glories of the spiritual state. Comparisons within the comprehension of the reader are necessary. Comparisons within the comprehension of the reader are necessary, and they but tamely tell of the superhuman man and his powers. However, this picture by John of what he saw when he was lifted up in the spirit on the Lord's day gives us a glimpse of what the redeemed man is like. Doesn't that sound angelic? Very much of the spirit realm. Closer to God. I'm gonna throw this in here. My background in religious study, being raised in different churches, or, my studies in Islam were very much restricted in the level of understanding. It wasn't what encouraged me to want to be closer to God. What I was taught, and what I think many of us were taught, was, to keep us out of the hellfire. If your goal is to stay out of the hellfire, then you understand why so many people put their toes on the line of what's considered acceptable, because they're still human beings. The reason that I've come to understand for learning higher spiritual knowledge is to be able to be closer to God, to be in close proximity to Jesus, to the prophets, to the source of our creation, to the I am consciousness, why we're here, what we're able to experience once we understand who we are and whose we are and how we are. It affects the type of decisions that we make. It's a difference between, as I said, making a decision to stay out of the hellfire versus making a decision to be closer to the Most High. Two different understandings. And that's what I hope that we all understand and get out of this in order to move closer to our higher selves. This is what we're here for now. This continuous foolishness that we've been subject to seeing or partaking in, it's time for it to stop or to reduce greatly. We know there's always going to be somebody with an agenda, but if enough people are living in their I am consciousness, if enough people are loving unconditionally, as we're taught that Jesus had unconditional love for each other, allowing each other to be and to grow organically, then things can be so much smoother. We can function on such a higher level, much more higher level than we are right now as a whole. And I'm backing up off my soapbox now. Whew. Okay, let me go back a little bit. However, this pen picture by John of what he saw when he was lifted up in the spirit of the Lord's day gives us a glimpse of what the redeemed man is like and what we shall attain when we awake with thy likeness. Awake with thy likeness. That's a quote. It should be thoroughly understood that this sight of Jesus that was given to John was not a vision of man who had died and gone to heaven up in the skies, but it was the opening of John's eyes to existence in what may be termed the fourth dimension man. The fourth dimension man. Third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension. That's something else that you can look up in your personal studies. What does it mean to function in the third dimension? What does it mean to function in the fourth dimension, fifth dimension? And if you have a Pinterest account, there's a lot of visuals on Pinterest related to these dimensions and what you can expect to experience in that process. So he goes on, we use this term fourth dimension because it is the name given to a state of existence that popular material science says must be in order to account for the effects that are being expressed on every side. It is also called the interpenetrating ether, which is not to be understood or something, understood as something material. When we talk about the ether, that's like unseen, energetic, higher spiritual stuff. Look up the etheric bodies and how that's affected by, our thoughts, our stress levels. If we can just manage our energetic connection to our etheric bodies, we wouldn't have some of the illnesses that we tend to develop because we're overly focused on material level things. That is my understanding and my opinion. You may comment below. Let's keep it going. Not to be understood as something material or as being matter, but as something having properties far more substantial than matter. Through the application of mathematical principles, scientific men are proving the existence of the spiritual side of being. This does not refer to the psychical realm in which undeveloped souls rest while awaiting reincarnation. Many people take it for granted that soul realms and spiritual realms are identical, but these stand to each other as moonshine and sunshine, Jesus called the interpenetrating state of being the kingdom of heaven, or in the original Greek, the kingdom of the heavens. He said that it was like a treasure hid in a field, which, when a man discovered it, he would sell all that he had to buy. The majority of Christians believe that they are going to this heaven when they die, but Jesus does not teach that the dead go first to glory. On the contrary, Jesus teaches that death may be overcome if a man keep my word, he shall never see death. Paul taught that Jesus attained victory over death. Christ, being raised from the dead, dieth no more. Let not sin, therefore, reign in your mortal body, that ye should obey the lusts thereof. Neither present your members unto sin as instruments of unrighteousness. So do not present your members unto sin as instruments of unrighteousness, but present yourselves unto God as alive from the dead, mental death, emotional, spiritual death, and your members as instruments of righteousness unto God. When you make the prayer, use me, Lord, um, use me, Lord, I am yours. That puts you on the path of a higher desire. Your desires aren't related to earthly things. If you really want to be in connection, in communion, in interaction with the Lord Most High, with the I am consciousness, the great I am, your focus is not down here, grabbing material things, of which there's enough for everybody. There's really no shortage. When you align your thoughts, words, and deeds in order to manifest what it is you're supposed to have in this life, there is no shortage. But people live in a lack mind state. People think that if someone else has more, then they can't have what they need. That's just not true. That is not true. And so by releasing your attachment to certain material understandings, material wants, whatever your next purchase may be, that's all well and good, but that's not where you attain the level of happiness and contentment that we're meant to have on this plane once we have a proper understanding of who we are, whose we are, and how we are. Let me keep reading, backing up off my soapbox again. I'm so much enjoying this study, and I hope you guys really continue to follow along with me and come along. And if you have any suggestions of books that can be gone over, please put them in the comment box, or you can contact me at pullyourpowerback@gmail.com. Back up a little bit. Paul taught that Jesus attained victory over death. Christ, being raised from the dead, dieth no more. And another quote, let not sin therefore reign in your mortal body, that ye should obey the lusts thereof, neither present your members unto sin as instruments of unrighteousness, but present yourselves unto God as alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness unto God. The psalmist writes, what is man that thou art mindful of him, and the son of man that thou visiteth him? For thou hast made him but little lower than God, and crownest him with glory and honor. Thou makest him to have dominion over the works of thy hands. Thou hast put all things under his feet. With the mind of the seer, Ralph Waldo Emerson says, great hearts send forth steadily the secret forces that incessantly draw great events. And wherever the mind of man goes, nature will accompany him, no matter what the path. That's manifestation of the highest form. He goes on to say, verily I say unto you, that ye who have followed me in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit on the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel, and every one that hath left houses, or brethren, or sisters, or father, or mother, or children, or lands, for my name's sake, shall receive 100-fold, and shall inherit eternal life. Signed, Jesus. That's some high-level shit. And that is just the introduction. So, 46 minutes. I'm wondering if I should do a round 2. I might need a break. Oh, alrighty. So that was the introduction. And with that, I'm going to end this video. Thank you for hanging in this long. If you have, subscribe, follow, like, share. Bring a friend along if you can. And be blessed in all things. I am enjoying this study, and I hope that you are too. Once again, you can find the 12 Powers of Man probably at your local library, on YouTube as several audiobooks, and on Amazon Kindle as ebooks. You know, if you want to follow along, read ahead, you can do so. And join me back here next Wednesday for the continuation. I'm really considering doing another chapter. This is nice. Talk to y'all later.